Hello, Beth. How are you
Hey,
today?
I'm great. How are you?
Good, good, good. We're
Well,
design challenge number 3. Can you believe it?
I know. I'm excited for this one.
All right. Well, this one we wanted to focus both of us on the idea of business transformation, more specifically on change and on managing change. And so I like this image because I often think for change to happen, something else has to sort of die, right? And there's a lot of great quotes around change and how difficult it is, but how necessary it is, how it's in the cosmos, et cetera. And so I wanted to do a business model shift that's pretty familiar to me and maybe to you, and it has to do with software companies. If you think about Microsoft Office, right, when it was first sold to all of us, it was sold under the context of we had to buy it. We would get that CD or that disc, right? We would install it, and then it was on us, right? It was good luck for the races. So that was the attract, land, good luck model. And then, of course, Microsoft and many other companies had to shift to this new model, which you may be familiar with, called a layer or layer. Um, and layer stands for land, adopt, expand, renew. And this was really important when Microsoft and other software companies were going from a perpetual CD to sort of a subscription-based offering. And what I like about this image is that it kind of works as a sort of a rotating image. So you can think of this as sort of a wheel where if a customer lands, they adopt, they expand, renew, then they'll maybe continue to adopt. This is sort of like our gym membership, right? But it's often got some challenges with sometimes people say maybe consumption-based pricing is more pure. But for the purposes of today's exercise, we're going to take us through that.
I
And
like the gym membership analogy because it gets to the crux of the challenge, which
sure,
buy it, you never use it, you're not going to renew.
fair, fair. Well, I go up and down, cyclical during the year. Depends on when holidays are coming up, et cetera.
Fair.
And so, thinking about the something has to change, something has to die. I started to think about there's different kind of quotes that are important with respect to change. You see these slapped up in people's change presentations all the time. And so, what I asked my group of attendees to do is to take a look at 10 quotes from famous individuals. There's even one from Mark Zuckerberg or so. I gave people 3 votes in a poll, right? So it was a multi-select poll. You can select up to 3, you don't have to, but ones that really resonate with you. And I wanted them to be prepared to discuss their rationale on the next activity. The purpose behind this was a little bit of an icebreaker, just to get us to think about, change is hard, change is important. But also, if I start to think about why these things matter to me, I want to have an answer to that. The other sort of thing we looked at last time we spoke was this idea of dotmocracy. In this particular case, this is why I don't love dots for this type of activity, where I wanted to discern out three answers that I could take to another activity. I wanted to get to something that appeals to the most group. When I gave the group 5 dots, you can see that they scattered them out, right? So dot voting, I thought, was kind of an interesting way to see when not to use it. When you're actually looking for a very select few, you're looking for people to really have to choose versus kind of spread the peanut butter across. Anyway, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, you could have given people 3 dots and still had it display this way, but I think you wanted to see it more as the kind of bar chart view of the
Yeah,
result,
yeah.
which
So I could kind of
feels a
see.
little more definitive than dots kind of randomly lined up.
Sure, sure. Yeah. So again, just looking at the bar, I sort of stack rank them. We should see that out of my 5 individuals, we had most of our people picking things on the top. So anything that had more than 3 votes, I chose to then sort of, and this is pretty quick, but for them to rationalize that in the sense of an activity that's our brainstorm by category. And here we had our individuals describe sort of why did this particular quote resonate so much with you. And we got some really powerful responses that were really personal, that we sort of spotlighted inside of the room, and we were able to share what that meant, why that's so important. So really getting people to sort of embrace what change means to them. And then what we did, just to kind of take it one step further, if you're familiar with our self-evaluation activity, what we did was we asked people to go through a series of 12 questions, and they all related to how they receive change, right? Are they always jumping in for joy? Do they need to control it if it's happening? Are they skeptical if certain things happen? And these were sort of generic questions related to change in general. But what it revealed is that we're sort of, as a whole, pretty adaptable to change, or at least that's the way we self-evaluate ourselves. Not that much of a skeptic, but what's interesting, Beth, is on the backside, of course, this is the data that I get to see. as the leader. And I can see that, Ted L here from a change skeptic was actually the lowest skeptic, but he was actually the highest in terms of change adapter. I can see that overall, our scores are lowest for Sam O, right? So I might, privately talk to Sam and just, get some questions or put him on the spot differently. But, the self-eval is a nice way for the individuals to kind of carry into the exercises their own beliefs around change. What are your thoughts on that?
And I love that you're able to get this insight into your stakeholders that are going to be critical for driving the change, and then also let them compare their own results with what you're seeing on average across the organization, so they can start to realize how engaged are they? Are there things that need to think about in terms of adapting to what's needed from the organization, or are they ready to go? So
Yeah.
it's a great use of the self-evaluation.
Yeah, and it's fairly anonymous to the users, but it's just a quick kind of break into the action as well. And then we got into the meat of the shift. So I put together this as an example, kind of a software company, let's call it Microsoft, in the days when it was switching to a cloud-based business model. And for this particular one, I put together this idea of a MOO method. And actually, let me hide the data for a second just to show the description of this itself for people who haven't seen this. The MOO method is a method for change where you're asking people to embrace, why are we doing this at all? And it asks us to evaluate on 3 different dimensions. What's going on in the market, the M, that's precipitating the need for us to change? What's in it for our customers if we're successful? And what's in it for ourselves? And Beth, I've actually done this for Microsoft and for SAP in the last 2 years. So this is still a relatively popular and successful model for sellers and sales leaders and customer success managers to think about, why are we doing this in the first place? And it allows us to sort of internalize that. And so when I kind of open up the description on that, what you'll notice is we get across answers. Scalability is in it for our customers. Of course, all the stuff that's in it for ourselves is very self-serving, like steady and predictable revenue streams, better data and insights, like wouldn't this all be great? But then if you go over to here, there's actually reasons that are happening in the market that are causing the need for us to actually have to do this change.
And so the context for this was specifically, they were already thinking about this, in your example, the shift to the cloud. And so you were digging in more about what in the market is driving this need, and then the impact to the customers and the organization.
That's exactly right. Yeah, going back to the quotes from earlier, right? Change is hard. We don't just do this because it's fun. We have to do this because it's necessary. And so this exercise is to get them to see, why is it necessary, and then what are the benefits if we're successful. So this is kind of the why, not necessarily the how or the what stuff, right? So then what we did on this is we sort of said, okay, we need to prioritize. That's a lot of stuff, but let's figure out, like, if we were going to go to shareholders and say, why are we changing? What's the most important things for this, right? And what you'll notice is when we do a stack ranking exercise, we're allowed to, on the platform, do this within each category. So you'll see that the shift towards remote and hybrid work models is the most important factor in the market that's precipitating the need for change. Not to say these other aren't important. And
based
then,
on the opinions of the group and that were involved in the conversation.
That's exactly right. Yeah. So all of the individuals that submitted, they ranked these things together. And they said, okay, there's big changes in the market. We know that it's going to provide steady, predictable revenue streams. And for our customers, the last group there, it's going to give them access to our latest software and features without large sort of upfront costs, right?
Oh, nice.
And so now what we're trying to do is say, okay, why are we changing? And then of the reasons, what are the most important things? So we're really motivated. We're kind of, I don't know, drinking our own Kool-Aid, so to speak. And then what I asked people to do is to go through an exercise where we had them think about mindset shifts. And I should have labeled that on the top. But this was the question that I asked: what are the sort of the biggest changes in mindset? What are the biggest challenges that we're going to face today in making any of that happen? So this is getting into the how piece of that change. And you'll notice that, we're pretty comfortable today with product-centric thinking. I like this one, we have this hero mentality that comes from these sort of large one-time deals, right? That jump in, that feels relevant for me. I thought you maybe would like this one here a little bit for yourself, this idea of sort of infrequent reactive customer touch points. So you can imagine, Beth, that I want to start to think about these challenges and then figure out what are the most important challenges that are sort of worth solving or need to be solved inside of this. And for the purpose of simplicity, I thought about doing a dot vote or some kind of a Likert scale, but I just sort of selected a few of these just based upon the conversation that we had in the group. And we narrowed these things down to just a few. And we took this concept of a transform idea exercise.
Before you jump there, oh, you jumped. Oh, that's okay. I love the prompt. Like, I think the notion of, we've talked about a change that's coming, we've talked about why it matters, and now let's talk about what does that imply in terms of mindsets that we need to adapt to make this successful. So I think that's fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, could have done different types of narrowing down exercises for this one. We just selected a few in the group. As you know, you can just grab a few of them and select them forward. And then we started to think about, and this was tough work, what are some of the things in this from column that are the most important ones? So we selected 5. And then what we thought about as a group is what's this sort of 2 exercise beyond that? And what's nice about these, when you say, okay, hero mentality that comes from large one-time deal, then we as a group typed in, these different responses. So, going from sort of this one size customer fits all mentality to sort of embracing ongoing customer relationship. And this one I left for you to decide, Beth,
Nice.
given your background. So focusing on just acquiring new customers, that's where we believe we're at today.
You're giving
Not
me
to put you on the spot, but what would you maybe decide for where we need to get to?
Yeah, you're giving me the softball one. No, I mean, definitely you're going to want to look at retention and expansion from existing customers.
Okay.
Kind of keyed it up with your layer model in the beginning. Yeah.
So there you go. We just do it that simple. So once we got everything from our left to our right, these are the mindsets. Again, just winding it up, right? We described what's going on in the market that's precipitating the need for change, what's in it for our customers if we're successful, what's in it for ourselves. We rank those to prioritize the stuff that's most important we communicate outwardly to. And then we said, okay, that's pretty important stuff, but what are we struggling with the most with today in order to get there? We put those as a sort of a from column and then expanded that to say, where do we need to get to? And then what I thought we would do is just do a very simple explore ideas exercise to say, what must be true in order for those to be successful, right? And so as a group, we went through each of those new mindsets one by one. And we said, okay, if that is the 2 state that we want to get to, what must be true? And I like this because it's an expansive question. It doesn't say what process need to be in place or what enablement needs to exist. It doesn't say that, right? But it gives kind of space for that.
Yes.
And you'll notice that your new one down here is now on the bottom, which we haven't added to anything for it, but we could, right? But you'll notice that people have typed in appropriate responses for what must be true. And this is where, as you know from this exercise, this is where people do their best thinking. It's the like exploration of ideas that we've come to versus the stab you in the middle of a prompt with a question.
Right.
And so anyway, what are your thoughts on this one?
This is the deeper dive. I always love these explore and explore by category exercises because it is where you start to unpack everything. Your entire session is really the work behind the work to make a change effective. And this is where you're starting to move from the theoretical and how should we think and feel to the practical and the pragmatic about, okay, if what must be true to embrace customer relationships is we need to continuously gather customer feedback. Now we have real direction on what do we need to do as an organization. We've got to define that program and what that looks like and how that's going to be done.
Yeah. Nice. And, I also want to just highlight that in all of these sort of what must be true exercises, we always have to define, okay, if that must be true, how could it be true? And so that's the next exercise that I got to, which was this notion of an action plan. And this is more of an experiment plan or a next steps plan. These don't have to be, laser defined. But what I asked the individuals to do is, okay, if you think that must be true, how could we make that true? What would be the things that we would need to do? And, Roy down here, who has a sales enablement background, got pretty fired up about, sales teams must be trained to do comprehensive versus standalone. So talked about training programs, creating sales materials, role plays. He put another one in with a different date, right? A little less urgent, but in incentive structures, that need to be ironed out. And so this just gives us a little bit of mental clarity that this is not easy. all of those reasons we would need to change are bright, but the ways that we're going to do that and how we're going to do that, the order at which we're going to do that, maybe there's a little bit more murkiness to that. And so this is trying to provide some clarity to what things need to happen. And I would obviously love to do this, multiple times, even with different audiences, and see where people are landing on this. That's what's great about the platform, is you get so much data out of this, right? And you can start to evaluate, are we seeing and hearing the same things by different groups, et cetera. But that was it. That was the last one.
I love that. So you're thinking like run it as focus groups, potentially, as you've got some initiatives in mind at the top, and now you're kind of reaching out to those next levels and understanding how people are thinking about it, and is it aligned with the overall vision?
Yeah. I think that
great.
The problem that we've seen in change is that it's often created by a select individuals of elite folks and then sort of presented to the organization. So I thought this was a nice vehicle to make it more of a conversation, to take some stuff that's a little bit all the way baked maybe, but needs some improvement in some areas, or to completely blue sky some other areas. So it's open. Absolutely.
And the action planning, obviously it's not like a full project plan, but it does start to lean towards, not just the first next steps, but you're seeing things in here that are, one-off projects or initiatives, but you're seeing other things that are going to be full-blown programs that are going to have an ongoing need within the organization to sustain them over time. So it would come back then up the levels in the
organization. Yeah, business case, right?
Right. If we're going to be changing incentive structures, then we've got to do some pretty deep work there to figure out what that looks like and what makes sense in the new role.
Absolutely. Change is fun. It's exciting stuff, but man, it is tough.
It's a lot to do, but the alternative of not doing it means you're not setting yourself up for success. So
sure. Thanks, Beth. Love to see you soon.
Sounds good.
Bye.
Bye.